And welcome to a special Time to Fire Tim Geithner edition of Hannity. Now, the story tonight, the lies keep coming. They're coming from Tim Geithner. They're coming from the president, and they're coming from Chris Dodd. And while they're busy feigning outrage and pretending to take responsibility, we have all the proof. And that is our headline on this day 60 of the Obama presidency, Proof of Lies. Now, remember all the madness, all the outrage that Democrats hurled at AIG CEO Liddy over the bonus scandal? If you don't remember, here's a reminder.
This old school teacher is going to give you a little bit of advice. Pay the $165 million back. What you've done here is basically you've reserved the bonus pool for the employees, and not only have you done that in this agreement, but you've basically protected yourself, immunized yourself from the stupidest decisions made by AIG.
Now, don't be fooled by the fake demonstrations of anger. These people passed the stimulus bill. They greenlighted the money for AIG, and it's all in the bill that they never read. Well, now there were warning signs. Congressman John Boehner, he's one that saw it coming.
1,100 pages, not one member of this body has read. Not one. What happened to the promise that we're going to let the American people see what's in this bill for 48 hours? But nope, we don't have time to do that.
All right, so now everyone's crying foul, claiming they had no idea these ridiculous bonuses were okayed. Well, wrong again. Tim Geithner, well, he knew on March 10th only after he spent a couple of days playing pretty stupid.
Our assistance comes with appropriately tough conditions on compensation to senior executives that's going to, incent what we need to happen and make sure that taxpayer dollars are not going to benefit those senior executives in ways that don't make sense.
All right, not so fast, Mr. Tax Cheat. On March 3rd, that's a week before, in an open hearing before the House Budget Committee, he was asked about these very bonuses by New York Congressman Joseph Crowley. Take a look at this.
Just last month, AIG paid 343 employees of AIG FP, their financial products division, that created the financial hole that AIG is in, and in turn, a multi-billion dollar bill for American taxpayers of $56 million in bonuses, and are slated to pay an additional $162 million in bonuses to 393 participants in the coming weeks. This company claims to be on the brink of disaster, and it's handing out bonuses.
It's very important that we make sure that where we're providing exceptional assistance to these firms, that assistance is going, again, to achieve the objectives of these programs, not to reward the kind of executives that got us in this mess.
And if we really want to dig further back, well, we can go all the way back to November 2008 when Geithner, then the head of the New York Federal Reserve, was negotiating the specifics of the restructuring of the AIG bailout. And according to documents that were received by the Fox Business Network, multiple emails went back and forth between AIG attorneys and the Federal Reserve about the handling of executive bonuses. And AIG executives, well, they maintain that they also informed the New York Fed. So are we supposed to believe Geithner, the head of the New York Federal Reserve, would not have been privy to any of this information, which, by the way, was circulating between the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the New York Fed? Well, the American people are not that stupid. Well, now enter Senator Chris Dodd, who's doing plenty of lying himself. Now, he created the loophole that allowed executives to receive their million-dollar bonuses. You know why? It was called the Dodd Amendment. But here's what he said this past Tuesday, March 17th, when blame was getting thrown his way.
I can't point a finger at someone who was responsible for authoring the language that put those dates in. I can tell you this much. When my language left the Senate, it did not include it. When it came back, it did.
But then miraculously, Mr. Dodd, well, he had an epiphany, and he said this Wednesday, the very next day.
As many know, the administration was, among others, was not happy with the language, wanted some modifications to it. They came to us, our staff, and asked for changes. And the changes at the time did not seem that obnoxious or onerous, so we agreed to some modification at the time.
So here we are now, March 20th, with your Treasury Secretary. Well, he's caught up in blatant lies. Chris Dodd, he's trying to save face as opposed to your money. And where's your president?
The immediate bonuses that went to AIG are a problem, but the larger problem is we've got to get back to an attitude where people know enough is enough, and people have a sense of responsibility, and they understand that their actions are going to have an impact on everybody. And if we can get back to those values that built America, then I think we're going to be okay.
All right, the lies stop here, Mr. President. Secretary Geithner, Senator Dodd, you know what? We're on to this, and the American people are also on to you, and it's time for heads to roll. You know why? Because the American people that are saving for their retirement and their kids' college education, they deserve better. And here with the reaction is former New York City mayor and former presidential candidate Rudy Giuliani. Well, you're a former prosecutor. Look, Dodd and Geithner lied, and the White House either has been lying or is incompetent. We've got to get to the bottom of this.
Well, we do. I mean, the worst part of it is all this does is continue to create a lack of confidence in the whole system going forward. I mean, you see the repercussions of it in the stock market the last 2 days. I mean, there's a sense that either nobody's in charge, or if they are in charge, they don't know what the right hand is doing, what the left hand is doing.
Unbelievable.
To pass a bill of this magnitude, of this sweeping magnitude and tremendous impact on the American economy, American budget, without reading it, is absurd.
And then to be feigning this outrage, we're so outraged, when they didn't read the bill. The American people deserve better when they're losing their retirement.
But as you point out, they didn't read the bill, and there are probably a lot of other things in there that are equally obnoxious. But this is a particular thing they did focus on.
That's
so
true.
The explanation they didn't know about it is also, this is not just a question of negligence. This is a question of, this was presented to them. They did agree to it. They appear to have agreed to it in a compromise that was worked out. Right. And now all of a sudden, when the thing becomes a big disaster, they're all trying to run for cover and run away from it.
But let's start with
That's
Geithner.
not leadership, which what America needs right now, just the opposite of leadership.
They're really, well, all right, so what do we do with Geithner? Geithner is saying he was shocked. He learned about it. He gave a very specific date. The White House gave a timeline earlier this week. Now we have tape that he knew a week earlier, and the New York Times reported, and these emails point out by the Fox Business Network, that they knew about this. He was the architect of this back in November. So if he knew about it, and now he's feigning outrage and saying he didn't know about it, that's a lie. He has to go, doesn't he?
I think he will. I think it's a matter of time, and how they finesse it, and how they explain it, and how they move on. Because you know, whatever else you think of the Obama administration, they want to be successful, and you have got to have, at any time, a Secretary of the Treasury who has great credibility. At a time like this, you can't have a Secretary of the Treasury that is someone people don't have confidence in.
What are we to think of Barack Obama at this particular point? I don't know, he gets great reaction when he goes on Jay Leno, and he seeks adulation. I don't know when the guy ever works, because he's always out doing a town hall meeting. But these botched
using a private airplane.
No, by the way, the cost I think per hour is $100,000 an hour.
The biggest private airplane in the world, just about. Right.
But botched appointments. He's got broken promises, earmarks, lobbyists, the biggest spending proposal in the history of the world, and he's got all this. I understand.
And the Chinese leadership
lecturing
him on responsible economics. The Chinese communist leadership.
I want to cry. You're making me laugh. I want to cry.
Don't spend so much money.
Isn't that
We've got
amazing?
a big investment in your country. Please don't act so irresponsibly.
And
the Chinese communist
and
leadership.
Hillary begging them, please buy our bonds. It's embarrassing.
And he,
all right,
the Chinese say, we got problems with this.
I want. This is important that we get this in before we lose you here. So where do we go from here? Is this an indication if they run healthcare, education, if they're going to come up with this cap and trade, radical environmental agenda? You know, I'm afraid for the country now.
I don't get to run their agenda by any means. It would seem to me that if that's what they have in mind, they're actually losing credibility, and they're going to have a very hard time with those programs, which maybe is the good news for this, because maybe there'll be a mid-course correction.
Right.
That this is going too far.
The American people will probably force it. What do you think about the Fed? Are we headed for inflation with $1.2 trillion now being pumped into the system?
Of course we're headed for inflation. Here, just think about it this way. We're spending $1.2 trillion, more than that, really. And there are only two ways to recoup that as the economy straightens out. High taxes, well, they're going to do that, but that gets you maybe 20, 25%. Even if you 90%, you've got to print money. The federal government can deal with spending any amount of money. The problem is they deal with it by printing money. As you print money, you reduce the value of present money. So you're looking at, unless there's some dramatic change inevitably 10, 15% inflation per year at some point when this all starts to kick in, unless we reverse it.
Do you have a good idea who would be a good replacement? You know a lot of good
If I were to mention any replacement,
they're done.
They would be done completely. Yeah. And I mean, and the problem is that you've got to have some people in any administration, Republican or Democrat, who've actually been in business. You know, who've actually run a business, made money, had to deal with payrolls, had to deal with paying taxes for other people, held that responsibility, and have also figured out what works and what doesn't work in our economy.
It would have been nice if the president had executive experience.
Well, I don't see anybody around right now that has that practical experience, and maybe that's the kind of person I look for.
I've got to thank you. You made me laugh on a day when I wanted to cry. Mr. Mayor, good to see you. Thank you. Appreciate it.